Hello there, I am Kid Champagne Matthew Haberman, and today we're back for another edition of Nostalgia Time. And this time we're talking about another Nickelodeon favorite, uh, which was part of our beloved Snick, legendary Snick lineup back in the day, back in the 90s. It's the horror anthology series, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Are You Afraid of the Dark? A children's horror, mystery, and anthology show that aired on Nickelodeon. Their first run aired on from 1990 to 1996, followed by another revival in 1999 2000, and again in 2019 going forward. And so how it is in the original run, tales were told by the specific group, the Midnight Society. And it was a group of kids that gather in the woods, in the dark, with a campfire. And each time, one of the members tells a scary tale. And the storyteller sits in this specific chair, which is dark as the storyteller's chair. They tell a little bit of intro of what their story is, and then they always have to start with the saying submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I call this story. So tonight I bring with me my members of my own Midnight Society. I have with me first my good friend, and he is the host of Unger the Radar, my co-host, my good friend Randy Unger. Randy, how are you?
I'm good, Matt. Thanks so much for having me back.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, we have fun. We have a lot to talk about. And also with me, I have two good fans of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Are You Afraid of the Dark from my other current Midnight Society members. First, Forrest Bennett. Forrest, how are you?
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. And also my good friend, the head of Cult Cafe, Midnight Society member, Matt Roarin. Matt, how are you?
I'm good. Great to be here.
That's awesome. Now, for this, I'm going to be giving my story, and I'm going to be starting it off, submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I call this story The Tale of the Champagne Pop. That's right. That's right. We're popping off the champagne tonight. So first off, I give for how the runs with the Midnight Society, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the Midnight Society in a minute. But first, my question is, how are you afraid of the dark? How you became a fan? What did you like about this show? Randy, start with you.
So I guess some of my earlier memories of the show were probably around 1994 when my parents got cable for the first time. And I was basically immediately hooked on Nickelodeon's programming, particularly weekday afternoons. And I think that's around the time I saw Are You Afraid of the Dark? Every weekday afternoon after school. It was just a nice little, it was really scary at the time when you're like, 9 years old, 8 or 9. But, it's such a great show because it introduces kids to horror in a very appropriate way. It's not like gratuitous violence. It's not overly scary. It's just creepy enough for a kid to enjoy. And it was definitely one of my favorite shows growing up.
Oh, definitely. It was one of my favorite shows growing up as well, especially when it was Saturday nights on Nickelodeon on Snick. It always aired at 9:30. It was one of my favorite ones at the night. And probably one that's like, if it was so scary, it's like I would have to sleep with my lights on. Forrest, what made you become a fan of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
All right, so I pretty much grew up with Nickelodeon. But my memories of it were mostly watching it on weekday afternoons after school, along with Universal Studios Monsters and Goosebumps was my gateway drug to horror. And now here I am like 20 something years later, and I am a diehard horror nut.
Oh, I can definitely see it.
It was, had a lot of it was appropriate enough that you could watch it without being traumatized at a young age, but still be creeped out. It had a lot of and it had a lot of atmosphere for a show with such limited, but I mean, watching it now, it has some. You could tell it's got there's some. You could tell that it had some but production like budgetary I guess issues or constraints. But still, it's still there's a lot of it's still a lot of atmosphere. Still a lot of creepy. They were still able to do a lot with not a lot.
True.
But, although I kind of noticed watching it earlier today that those Canadian accents really creep in.
No, that's true. To Matt Rourn, you're a fan of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Tell me your.
I mean, I grew up like obsessed with anthology shows. I mean, from watching Twilight Zone and like Alfred Hitchcock Presents on like Nick at Night, watching, I mean, the 80s were like, we had so many anthology shows, Amazing Stories, Tales from the Dark Side, Monsters, Freddy's Nightmares,
Tales from the Crypt,
Tales from 1989, and this was a nice continuation into the 90s. The 90s. Besides, I mean, you had Tales from the Crypt was still on, and then until 95, you had Outer Limits came back. But besides that, the 90s were kind of when the anthology kind of disappeared, at least from non-cable, because Outer Limits was on Showtime, Tales from the Crypt was on HBO, so this was like the only like basic cable anthology show that was current. And I loved the framing of the show, that it had this constant campfire tales opening. I love the how they took from the Twilight Zone, the submitted for your approval, and kind of like brought that into what they say is the opening. And it's a lot of fun. It had that it was like, not less scary, but kind of zany.
Yeah.
Elements of like, say, like Erie, Indiana, which I was also a very big fan of, like where the it was just like a kooky monster of the week kind of thing, and like it had that kind of vibe to it, and I just thought it was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I enjoy Are You Afraid of the Dark from all those tales. I mean, we relate to Are You Afraid of the Dark like the same. The Twilight Zone and Goosebumps, they all hold it to us. But I mean, a Twilight Zone was not in our time. That was from the past. I mean, Goosebumps was, but I still feel like it didn't hold up from what it could be.
I would say with Goosebumps, it was all about the book. The books were better than the show.
Much better. Yeah, because you would see the episodes for your favorite book, and they really did not do the books justice at all, in my opinion. Yeah. Like what was going on in my imagination was so much better than what they put out on TV, in my opinion.
Exactly. I mean, I still think it was good. I did enjoy the Goosebumps show because I was a fan of the books, but nothing stood out more than Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I just love, and just to think about it, like how cool would it be to like just have a few of your good friends go to the woods, sit in a campfire, and just tell a scary tale? Like, how awesome would that be?
It would, but I don't think I'd go into like Forest Park or Central Park and do that. It just doesn't sound very safe. But back in the 90s, in like suburbia, yeah, perfectly fine. So
where I grew up, we were always in the woods next to my house. Like a couple blocks from where my parents lived, we hung out in those woods all the time. That would have been a perfect place for it. I'm sure people did stuff like that there. There were always, you could tell little fires were set up. So
Unfortunately, I mean, I grew up in the suburbs, but unfortunately, there's no woods. There weren't any woods near me, and no friends nearby to gather for campfire stories. So, but but I wish I could have been able to do stuff like that growing up.
Yeah.
And my friends, we all would go over each other's houses and watch anthology shows. We'd watch the shows instead of campfire.
The next best thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. So as we know from the show, I mean, we all know from the theme song is not, and when the matches go on, "Are You Afraid of the Dark" comes out, and then we see the Midnight Society. So I want to get for there were rules in the Midnight Society. So in the rules for joining the Midnight Society, a current member can bring a candidate to a meeting to tell a story for awaiting initiation. And the candidate is blindfolded so they don't know the trail into the campfiring. And then once after they tell their tale, the members have to vote whether for his acceptance. And the vote had to be unanimous acceptance, or else they're not in the Midnight Society. And which came to, we learned that, which we will be talking about in the first tale in a little bit, but looking at the Midnight Society, those members are only in there for such a short time, but the creators and the directors, they gave them some good characteristics for the show. They had some good characters, like one of them, the leader of the Midnight Society, Gary. All into magic. So we have like all this with magic, and we all know that most of his tales had the recurrence of one actor that I like, Mr. Sardo.
No, Mr. Emphasis on the dough.
And I mean, we'll be getting into that in a moment. Well, actually, Sardo was played by Richard M. Dumont, and he was owner of Sardo's Magic Mansion store, and he would basically he was more like trying to make money, but he also had some like these special magic. He sold like these powerful magic items, which involved in many of those stories. I'll just put it out there. Randy and I today, and it will be exclusive on Unger the Radar's channel on YouTube. Randy and I, we had the privilege to interview Richard M. Dumont, the actor who played Sardo in Are You Afraid of the Dark, as well as DJ McHale, the co-creator of Are You Afraid of the Dark, and Jason, who played Frank as in the Midnight Society.
Jason Alice Sharon. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. I mean, it was just such a great time interviewing them today, and I've learned so much from the show. Randy, what did you think of it?
I mean, it's really your love for the show, Matt. I mean, I love the show too, but I think you like it a little bit more than I do. And that prompted me to reach out to some of the talent involved with the show. And yeah, like you said, we were very honored, very privileged and lucky to score this group interview. And I think, we learned some great things. There's some nice little tidbits behind the scenes stuff from the co-creator. We got a really nice, some good anecdotes from all three of them. And, it really, it actually increased my appreciation for the show, talking to these three guys who were so instrumental in bringing this show into our lives, into our childhood. And, it was a really great interview. Definitely.
And I've learned so much. Actually, we'll be talking about one of the episodes from Jason Sharon, what I learned about it today. So it will be discussed. And I'm not going to spoil anything right now as we get into the show, but we will be talking about that specific episode. as well, but just learning about the stories from what they've gone through. And DJ was just an elite leader in directing it, and just so dedicated with the shows, and every actor was just dedicated to him. It was just amazing.
Yeah. To have that, like, we really spoke to the collaboration on set, and that is paramount in any film or TV project. If all the actors, all the crew are getting along, they're gonna put across a great product. And like I said, Are You Afraid of the Dark? It's a great show, and it really is a testament to collaboration and the spirit of teamwork. So yeah, again, great interview, very illuminating. Glad we did it.
And especially, I was always a fan of Sardo from Are You Afraid of the Dark? I just love for what he brought to the table, and how, with his experience from it, it was just amazing. But actually, I want to talk about another thing too. How many of you, to Matt or Forrest, have you ever been to Montreal, Canada?
Yes.
I have never been to Montreal. No.
Yeah, I went there once for a heavy metal festival several years ago.
Nice.
Right. I mean, we know that Are You Afraid of the Dark was mostly filmed across Canada, I think from like Vancouver and Montreal.
According to Joanna Garcia, who played Sam for the last three seasons of the first run, the show was shot in Montreal. That's what or at least that's what I wrote. I think that's what she said in the book in the book Slimed, which is about the Slime, the golden age of Nickelodeon. If you ever read that book.
Is that also a documentary, Forrest?
I think it did turn into a documentary, but it started out as a book.
Right.
And they were talking to a lot of Nickelodeon personalities from the 80s and interviewing a lot of Nickelodeon personalities from the 80s and 90s.
Well, I actually went to one of the Are You Afraid of the Dark filming locations after being there from it. The amusement park, which was shot from the Tale of Laughing in the Dark, and also from the miniseries from the second revival of The Tale of the Silver Scythe for Playland, was done at the amusement park La Ronde, which was in Montreal. And I remember going there.
Cool.
Wow.
I went there when I was on summer teen tours. And then when I looked back, and when they showed us, that looks like La Ronde.
Wait, wasn't that part? Isn't that amusement park in Parc Jean Drapeau?
Mm.
The amusement park, isn't that in Parc Jean Drapeau? In Parc Jean Drapeau. I'm trying to think of the location.
I'm trying to figure out from where it is, but I know it's in the city center in Montreal,
Okay.
Right. But you can see it off from the Montreal Bridge, when you're entering the city. It's right off from it. Because Montreal is kind of like Manhattan, a city, big island. That's Montreal.
Now the show was based and filmed in Canada, but there also were a lot of sets, a lot of sound stages, according to DJ McHale. But were there a lot of locations that they used, actual locations in Canada that they used?
They used some on the city streets in Montreal, as well as Vancouver. And I think Toronto, they used some in Toronto.
Cool.
But again, it was such a great time talking with them today. It was just amazing, especially for all that I've experienced and all I learned. So Randy, I want to thank you for getting them together for this. It was great. And you know what? This is what nostalgia time is. We collaborate, we pop the champagne. We try to get guests to interview, to just celebrate their work and for the love. That's what I love to do with nostalgia time. So you'll be seeing, we're going to try. We're going to be trying to see a lot more of these in the times to come for our talent interviews, and they will be released only on YouTube on the Unger the Radar channel.
Yep.
Now getting into this, we talked about Sardo from Are You Afraid of the Dark? But there is another recurring character in a lot of episodes actually from the start, and that's Dr. Vink.
With a V.
V. Yeah, everyone thinks like Dr. Think. No, Vink with a V.
Yes.
And that was played by Aaron Tager, and he was. Thank you for that, Forrest. He would often appear as a mad scientist or a sorcerer, or and like when he enters and when he introduces himself, he says, "Vink's the name, Dr. Vink." And then the other characters go, "Dr. Think, Vink with a V. Because everyone mispronounced. And then as he's looking, he's like kind of crazy. And then you see that the characters go, "Is he a nutbag?"
I can't believe they used that dialogue for a kids show. That seems a little risque.
It does.
It was Canada.
The rules are different.
I mean, this is the country that gave us Terrence and Phillip.
And after like hearing from what he has to say, depending on what his occupation, because we see Dr. Vink go from like a mad scientist to a film director, or even a chef.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's like not just he was not like this. He was like you're a guy that wears many hats. I'm gonna say that. I think that's. Yeah. But one thing after, like he all says, and when he does, he goes, "I am not a nutbag." But do you guys really think he is a nutbag?
He's out there for sure. He's eccentric, maybe is the word.
He's a bag of something. I don't know if it's nuts.
An eccentric and a jack of all trades.
Yeah,
I like that.
No, but I think that was one character that I also love. Also, Aaron, he also played in actually. He wasn't in his Dr. Vink character, but he was also in the Tale of Laughing in the Dark when he was introduction when people go into Laughington Dark. It's the most fun in the park when you're laughing in the dark. And he also did like the voice of Zebo, "Give it back."
Right here.
So I'm glad that they kept him on for that kind of character, and I think it really grew. Are You Afraid of the Dark? If it wasn't for the characters of Sardo and Dr. Vink, I don't know where Are You Afraid of the Dark would be without those two, because they made that show, and we'll prove to show when we interview the Tale of Cutter's Treasure, which was the one where both of those characters interact in the show.
yeah. I mean, that's something Nickelodeon, and it's like they're all Canadian shows. They were so good at these adult actors that grounded these children casts, like we talked about with the Alex Mack show. You had a great ensemble of adult actors who were working amongst it. I mean, you had you can't do that on television.
Les Lye.
The guy who played Barth. And
Les Lye, that's the actor's name. Yeah.
Yeah, like you always need like that that like stable adult to kind of like ground it.
Or even Mark Summers on Double Dare.
Yeah.
And even sometimes the adult characters are less mature than the actual kid.
Right. Exactly. It's a perspective thing.
I mean, it was all great, and we do need those certain characters in to stable the story. We do. We have no choice. So going into it, we're going to have now our episode reviews. We're going to start with the very first episode, which is of the first season, which is The Tale of the Phantom Cab. This was done actually. The storyteller on this one was Frank, and this was his initiation story into the. This is what told introduction of the Midnight Society, how a member gets initiated in all the rules of the Midnight Society. So it tells that as well. So in this, the Tale of the Phantom Cab, it had where two brothers who often fight a lot. They decide to take a hike in the woods, and at some point in there, they get lost, and they ruin their map and their compass misdirection, so they get lost in the woods, and they find themselves where they find a cave where they find Dr. Vink. The introduction of Dr. Vink. Vink's the name, Dr. Vink. And in this, in order to help them find their way out, he wants them to solve a riddle. However, one of them was younger that he didn't, he was good at solving riddles, but he couldn't quite figure what the riddle was, which was if you take you have to take something out of the barrel to make it lighter. And what is it to solve the riddle? But they couldn't solve the riddle, and Dr. Vink can't help them anymore, but hints in that if they go to a certain point in the woods, that there will be a taxi cab that can pick them up. So the two boys go to that area, and there is a cab. So they get in back to town, but it turns out to be this their guide that led him to Dr. Vink in the first place, and then tells him that he was the one that took his hand, and tell him about for the cab is like, well, I sort of died. And they had to make sure that they solved the riddle before they crashed into a tree. And which they did. And suddenly the cops come to take them back home. And I thought this story was right because it started the series of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I do think it was a great story. What do you guys think?
For me,
Randy.
I just remember a lot of fog and in the woods, very creepy atmosphere. Very appropriate way to start this series off. It really established the tone for pretty much the rest of the series. The child actors, not great. The two brothers, they were, from what I remember, pretty annoying, but we went along with the ride anyway. The riddles were very intelligent. I really like that type of stuff, like Die Hard with a Vengeance. They had, solve all these riddles to save their lives. So I think it was a pretty strong introduction to the show. The acting, aside from Dr. Vink, not that great, but overall a good episode.
That's good. Forrest, what did you think of it?
Well, okay. This is actually first. I just want to point out a bit of trivia. The actor playing the older brother is Jacob Tremblay's father.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's the young boy from The Predator, right?
The Predator, Room. I think he was in Good Boys also.
Yep, that's a funny movie, by the way.
The actor playing the older brother in this episode was his real life father.
Oh wow,
weird.
Jason Tremblay. But anyway, so yeah, this is actually one of the episodes I remember very well because of because of that part where when Vink is looking for a specimen, and he pulls out that jar with the severed hand. That was pretty much etched in my mind right away. That was etched in my mind right away.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I agree. It definitely set the tone. It definitely sets the tone for the rest of the series. And walking around the woods in the middle at night alone it's definitely. I feel like for any young kid that must be, or especially a young kid back then with no GPS. Would be very an intense experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and then also getting in that cab, then getting in that, and then getting in that cab with a dead guy. Holy holy shit! It's been a while for us to watch the show. So, but um, yeah, this is definitely one of the ones that I remember very well.
Mm.
Just for this, but just for the severed hand, the cab driver's severed hand. Like the fact that, and now looking back, it's like they actually showed that on they actually showed that on a kids show.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, at that time in the 90s, you could get away with anything.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Well, at least you could get away with crude humor, but like stuff, but like a severed hand. There was cartoons were. I mean, yeah, there were cartoons were a lot more violent back then. But as far as live action children's programming, you didn't see this.
Let's talk about Ren and Stimpy. That will be another topic that we'll have on our show. Ren and Stimpy at the time. If you want to talk, in the times of that in the 90s, Nickelodeon, it was like setting the bar, like what you could get away with.
Well, that was the whole reason that Snick existed, was like, we need a time slot for Ren and Stimpy. It can't be during the day when kids watch it. And they were like, all right, let's do adult programming for children.
Or hell, look at episodes. I mean, you can't do that on television. There's a lot of bits there that you probably now, like the firing squad sketches.
Oh yeah, I mean, and how many of those where it's like they have fake cigarettes and stuff like that, like just little minor things. They're like drinking and smoking in sketches, like where it's like you couldn't even do that on a kid's.
You can't do that on television now.
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't do it on television now. Then you could get away with it.
Nice.
No, Matt, what did you think of the episode?
Yeah, same thing with Forrest. I mean, it was like for your first exposure to the show, that hand in the severed jar, like it's like when I think of the show, I think of Vic holding that hand in a jar, and getting into the cab and the cab driver just stating that like he's reliving this accident over and over again. It's like that's the kind of thing that's sticks with you, and it was definitely a good introduction for the show.
Oh, definitely. And our next episode that I had everyone review was The Tale of the Super Specs. And this one was the introduction of the beloved Sardo. No, mister, accent on the dough. And this involved a prankster named Weeds who buys a pair of novelty glasses from Sardo's magic shop called the Super Specs. And in it, like the Super Specs, when you put them on, shows people from another dimension. And in this alternate universe is populated by figures in black that are looking to merge with the known universe unless Sardo can close the door between the two dimensions by doing a seance. And it was pretty good. I do like that because, I mean, it was kind of like a little bit scary with like those super specs. I'm like, ooh, this is scary. Don't put them on. Like, it's kind of scary. And then how we learned from it, and what DJ and Richard said for how they did that episode is like they had people like really moving the table like on like a board. There was no CGI for doing these episodes. There was like absolutely no CGI during these episodes at this time. This was all man-made, and how they were doing it, they did it on a tight budget. So just the creativity alone in all these episodes was just amazing.
Yeah.
Randy, what did you think of the episode?
So I actually rewatched it maybe about a week or so ago in preparation for tonight. And what struck me immediately is that it borrowed a lot from, it really felt like it borrowed a lot from John Carpenter's They Live. Which was a really fun 80s sci-fi comedy thriller with the specs that basically when you put them on, you could see like sort of an alternate version of what's really there. And that's the thing that I loved about this episode, is that, you know, it came out after They Live, so I'm hoping that they use They Live as inspiration, because that would be amazing. But again, with the like you mentioned, Matt, the visual effects were very simple at the time. They didn't have to rely on CGI, which was amazing. I'm all for practical effects. I think they add to the authenticity of any film or TV show. So for this show to do that is very, very cool. So I'm glad that they went that way.
Oh yeah, I'm glad they went that way too. I mean, I just love that creativity. Boris, what did you think of that this episode?
Yeah, it's interesting that you point out that They Live like, you know, I hadn't seen They Live when this episode aired.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is but yeah, I mean, this is probably not the for me. This is probably not the first episode of when I think of Sardo though. But yeah, I really liked this one. This one was definitely more on the as far as like, which as far as to compare it to more adult anthologies, it was definitely more on the Twilight Zone side of things, in terms of just being more of a strange, weird story than a straight up scary one. And actually, interesting thing I was thinking of was, like, you know, back in the early 90s, you know, apart from like Uhura and Kirk's kissing in the original Star Trek series, you didn't see a lot of interracial relationships on TV at the time. And this one, you've got a black kid, you know, dating a white girl, and it's done and they're completely casual, and portrayed completely casually, like
Canada. Not American, that's why. But yeah, I mean, it's great to see, especially on a children's show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you know, normalizing it. You know, instead, I mean, even if they did it on you know, 80s, you know, sitcoms, but it always became like such a, you know, the episode was about that. Whereas like, I can't believe you're dating a, you know. Whereas like, this is just like, it's happening and it's there. They're not mentioning it. You know, it's because it's normal.
Yeah. You definitely need that inclusiveness or inclusivity. Especially
that's one of the great things with, you know, most of Nickelodeon shows being Canadian productions was, you know, it definitely, like, growing up on that, we got to see a lot more diversity than we were used to.
Yeah, Nick's always had a very progressive streak.
Yeah.
Oh, they did in the 90s and in the early 2000s.
I'd say they still do. Maybe granted, I don't watch it as much. You know, I'm not watching the network like I did back then, but I'm pretty sure they still do stuff like that.
Yeah.
In the ways for how it things, but Paramount and Viacom, they did dip down the hill at a certain point, which I will get into.
They made it more corporate, so.
But on that note, I do think it was one of a very creative episode. And one thing about Are You Afraid of the Dark? There are some tales that are really not so scary, and then tales that were really, really scary. And one tale that I felt that was really, really scary is the tale of the Quicksilver. And this one with the tale of the Quicksilver, and they had special guest Tatiana
Ali.
As well as Stuart Stone, a famous musician right now. And not only that, but what I've learned today from that episode alone is that Jason Aleshard's brother was in that episode as well. So it was just mind blown that I haven't even known that. But it was kind of like a nice feeling, like, hey, like brothers are getting involved in the show. It was kind of cool, but it's still This is the one that scares me the most. Is the Tale of the Quicksilver. So with the Tale of the Quicksilver, it starts where Tatiana's character, Laura, she does a seance because the house is haunted by a certain ghost. And she tries to get rid of it by doing sort of magic. And nothing goes right. And the room catches on fire. And it was known that she died. About a few years later, the house is sold to a family with two brothers, and weird things started happening in the house. They know like it's being haunted, but it was not just haunted by this creepy ghost. It was also haunted by Laura's ghost as well, but they don't even know that. And when the ghost of Laura was trying to know that she is the Quicksilver, which they learn is that she is a friendly ghost that leaves a little cue wherever they haunt and gives them warnings about that there is a terrible ghost. And when the ghost comes out and tries again, I just saw like, oh my God, this ghost is really, really creepy. Mm-hmm. And then what is it? The character Aaron, which was played by Jason's brother. They go to school and meets with Connie, who was actually Laura's twin sister. And they go, and she explains of what happened in the house that, it was haunted, that she used a thing of magic. So they decided to finish what Laura started by getting rid of the ghost, to do the same kind of ritual. But at the start, it was going the same way. Like, what did wrong? And it goes like, and the ritual goes to tame the creature, trace a door with chalk so white, burn incense. And the terms were Locobarius, Locorati, creature darkness, come to me. And they tied an oak tied with silver with and they tried to enter a special magical amulet, Locobarius Locoradet, but it wasn't working until Doug knows that the spoon was not silver, it was steel. So he takes his wings that were silver. I command you, stay where you are. Locobarius Locoradet. I command you to enter the amulet. And the bad ghost was therefore no more. And I still feel like it was a really, really scary. I mean, it scared the hell out of me. Yeah. And that night when that came on, I slept with the lights on because I felt like so scared from that, like I was going to get a nightmare. Randy, what did you think of that episode?
Extremely disturbing, complex. I remember the ghost being pretty frightening as well. So that kind of leaves an everlasting impression in your mind. I also want to praise Tatiana Ali's performance. I think she was really good in this. And I think she was doing this around the same time, like the first two seasons had already passed, or they were in the middle of the first two seasons of Fresh Prince. And they really gave her a great opportunity to show off her acting chops, which I think she did a really great job. And yeah, aside from her acting and the disturbing ghosts, this was a particularly dark story, really, really freaky. Like the fire, the scenes, of that, coupled with the ghost, just overall very powerful and unforgettable.
Yeah, definitely. Like I tell you, it was kind of disturbing, but it's one thing, like, how much can you push the barrier? And that's what Are You Afraid of the Dark did. It's how much can you push it? Like on a Disney, this would not qualify for Disney. I mean, no. This would be thrown out if this was Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, this you would see on Fox. I would see that. This can definitely be picked up by Fox, like this kind. But hey, it worked for Nickelodeon. Forrest, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I definitely. This is definitely one of the stronger. This was definitely one of the strongest episodes. And yeah, it was interesting seeing Tatiana Ali doing a more serious role, especially at that time. Oh God, I'm trying to think if there's. My memories get my. I mean, I just watched the episode today, but my memory's getting a little logged right now. But I got nothing. I got no, I got nothing. I got. No, I got.
We'll circle back.
So, Matt, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of the more standout episodes because it's like I don't know how long I actually watched the show when it aired, because I was getting a little long in the tooth when it was on, but I do remember this episode specifically. As far as these episodes go, like the writing of this episode is solid. This is definitely one of the better written episodes, and the acting was pretty fantastic. And yeah, the image of that ghost and like the look on the ghost's face when like the ghost realizes that like they got it right, and it's like they cut to it. It's like kind of like it's just like I don't know. There's spine tingling. But yeah, I mean this is definitely one of the prize catches of the show. This one is definitely stand out.
And going back to the ghost, that makeup job is insane. it's so
like,
scary.
And you can tell for what DJ said, like everyone was dedicated and took the pride in their work. Kudos to the makeup team. They did a hell of a job.
Yeah, definitely. It'll haunt your dreams.
It will haunt your dreams. And I'm just going to put out a recommendation for anyone who's listening and wants to. I definitely recommend showing these or having your kids watch these episodes. But some of them are for caution, especially the Tale of the Quicksilver. I recommend of an age of 9 that can watch this. I'm going to go with an age of 9. I don't know about you, Matt. I don't know.
7.
Huh?
I'd say 7.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say. I mean, my 9-year-old. I mean, I'm thinking about my 9-year-old just watch Children in the Corner with me. So I think she's ready for this.
I mean, I saw Sleepwalkers when it first came. Yeah, I think I was 7. God. Yeah, no, but
that movie confused the hell out of me when it came out.
It's freaky, but
I was like, I don't know. I'm terrified, but I think for a different reason. Like what?
Yeah, but I think like 8 or 9 is appropriate. I'd say for this for sure. Yeah, I think so.
On another scary tale that I had everyone watch, The Tale of the Water Demons. Now we know for what it is that 2 cousins, well, one of the cousins was sent to live with his uncle and his little cousin that owned a store in a nice little small ocean seaside town. Brought out his mind because he was getting into trouble and thought that maybe spending the summer would change up his attitude. And one time they get sent from their store is delivery of coffee to this old sailor collector, a sea captain who lives near right off the shore of the water. And as they get there, he's all jittery because he hasn't really slept in like, I'm going to say months, because he is cursed because of haunting of water demons, ghosts that want to take him back to their watery grave for taking their valuable possessions, as he was cursed. Because what it was is that in the story, it's something doesn't belong to you. It's don't take it, even in their dead. They don't want their stuff to be taken with. and he only can sleep for like a certain amount of time till they get up to the door when he hears, so they can wake up. And at that time, one of the cousins had a fight with their uncle, so he goes out to the hammock. And at that time, the sea captain falls asleep and the water demon comes out. And just seeing those water and just seeing the creativity of those water zombies, I'm like, oh, this is another one like those scared the crap out of me. But I wasn't scared to sleep with my lights on because I know I didn't take anything from a dead guy. So I slept with the.
Not this time.
But I'm just seeing like how it was, like the creativity, and it was just again another well-written story and a scary story. It's just the creativity and the makeup artist and for everything. It was just amazing. Randy, what did you think of it?
It didn't really leave as much of a lasting impression on me, but I definitely enjoyed the makeup effects once again. It actually kind of reminded me of the first Creep Show, the Ted Danson segment where they basically die and turn into zombies and basically try to seek revenge on Leslie Nielsen. So I found that parallel very prevalent. Other than that, the acting was pretty decent. It was an average episode in my mind. I was not really impressed with it, but except for definitely the makeup effects were the main high point for me.
Matt, what did you think of it?
Well, this is an episode. I think this is the first one out of the ones we watched for this that I did not remember. I think this is probably this was what, season 4 or 4 or 5. This was 4, end of 4. So I don't think I had seen this when it came out. I mean, pretty much like what Randy said. I thought this was like a run-of-the-mill episode. The makeup effects were great. But even I watched it earlier today, and I honestly don't remember too much of it. I thought it was an okay episode.
That's good. And yeah, well, I guess I'm the one that really likes it.
Unfortunately, I didn't even get to this episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope everyone got to this episode, because this episode it has packed with a lot of good rising guest stars from it. The Tale of Station 109.1. Guest starring Ryan Gosling, and Gilbert Gottfried.
Yeah, he did this and Goosebumps. he hit both those shows.
And he was on the Mickey Mouse Club at the time too.
True, yeah.
He's everywhere.
Jason Marsden Jason Marsden was in it as well.
Well,
yeah, that's right.
And what it was is that Chris, who was fascinated and obsessed with death and dying, everything with like funerals and hearses, he discovers a radio station that guides the recently deceased into the afterlife. And what happens was that DJ Roy mistakenly puts Chris on the list that he was recently deceased. And they had to make sure that he had to make sure to get out and to convince him that he wasn't dead. And that was when they tried to put him into the afterlife, and they told, oh, he wasn't dead yet. And also that it showed also a powerful tale that, if you led a bad life, you're going to live a nastier afterlife. But if you lived a good life, then there is nothing to worry about. And that also shows that, like, we should, just live like we're having a good life, because there will be nothing to worry about when that time comes. So I thought this was a great episode. It had some great guest stars, and I'm a big Gilbert Gottfried fan. And I mean, I loved him in Problem Child. and I still like him for this day, and I think he's a great comedian. I do want to see him live.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm going to start. Matt, what did you think of this episode?
This was another one that I saw today for the first time, and I got a total kick out of it. I thought this episode was a lot of fun. I mean, Gilbert Gottfried, you put him in anything, and it's magic. The whole having Jason Marsden in here too was great. Like I mentioned earlier, Erie, Indiana. That show made me a huge fan of him, his character Dash X on that show, and then later on, Hocus Pocus. I just it was just an overall fun episode. I love the whole you've got the wrong person. It's like, no, I don't. But it's just a lot of fun. I mean, this episode. This is definitely one I suggest people to watch. It's a good tale, and it's just fun.
Forrest, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I have to agree with Matt. This is definitely one of the more fun episodes, especially with Gilbert Gottfried in there, as well as seeing Ryan Gosling, before he was a name, along with staying with Jason Marsden. I also got a kick out of when he's looking up I forget, I think it was right. Yeah, it was Gosling. He was looking up the radio station on the web, and just seeing that browser, the internet back then, or the fact that they're even listening. Yeah, I was like, wow, like how far we've come from that, and also even just like the fact that they're even listening to the radio. It's like nobody really listens to the radio anymore. Like, I mean, the radio's not really as a presence anymore. So in that regard, it is kind of dated. It is kind of dated, but still, it's still interesting to see how far we've come from that. From how far we've come from all this, like from the technology to Ryan Gosling and Jason Marsden being nobodies.
Gilbert Gottfried being at the same level he's always been.
Yeah.
And
or even just seeing, or for me at that time, just seeing Gilbert Gottfried in a role that wasn't Iago in Aladdin.
Yeah,
that is true. I mean, it was more of a fun episode. It wasn't really a scary episode, but that's the thing with Are You Afraid of the Dark? Some are not so scary. It was like a lottery.
Yeah.
What are you going to get? Are you going to get something scary? Are you going to get something mystery? Or are you going to get something that's just so
Weird.
out of the...
It's another thing with the format, the framing of the show, how each storyteller tells a different type of story is a perfect way to get away with doing all the different genre styles. Is like, oh, well, that's the kind of story that this person tells. So I always thought that the framing it was really good.
Randy, we haven't got to you. What do you think of this episode?
So,
I had this episode to think of you because I know you're a big Gilbert Gottfried fan as well.
oh man, I love the man. I actually met him in the city once. I saw him walking on the street near Union Square, and I actually got a picture with him. And he looked just like a regular guy. And he walks by, and I see this. He looks so familiar, and I'm like, that can't be him. And it was. And he barely said anything. I said, can I get a photo with you? He mumbled, yeah.
I was going to ask because that voice, his voice is very distinctive, but before I understand, that's not his real voice.
He's got a very quiet, low voice, really totally different from the crazy character that he usually plays.
I saw David Bowie at Roseland Ballroom. This was in the early 2000s, and I was waiting online to get in, and I saw Gilbert Gottfried just walking down the street, and he was just whatever, just walking, and then he noticed a large crowd of people that were all looking at him, and all of a sudden he just started talking to himself, just very loud, like what are you talking about? I don't know. Here's I guess so people wouldn't bother him, And it was like before people had like phones and they could like hidden phones. It was just, I thought it was so funny. I was like, what is he doing?
Yeah, just being Gilbert.
Yeah.
But you know what? This episode, when I saw him show up, it's like, yes, thank you, Matt. Thank you for giving us this episode to talk about, because yeah, I'm a huge Gilbert Gottfried fan ever since Problem Child, obviously, and everything he's done after that. But this episode was actually pretty, again, pretty deep, because it deals with death and the afterlife, and I really respect any filmmakers or directors who present death to children, like in a story, to like introduce them to mortality. I think that's a very brave thing to do for any filmmaker or director. So I mean, I don't think this was the best. Like I think the recent movie Soul does it a little bit better, but this is still a valiant attempt at putting death on the table and just kind of educating kids about it, and then throwing Gilbert Gottfried in there and a prepubescent Ryan Gosling, and you've got quite an episode. So this is one of the better ones for sure.
Oh, definitely. And just, there's been like so many episodes that I had to pick, and I know we've seen so much more, but given with the time, I just we're going to be talking about a few, but I want to just say, just with DJ's resources for who he used, like for some that we haven't seen them, they've grown up to be these big hits. Like, you can just pop, oh, he did this. You never thought that they would do this. Like Ryan Gosling did an episode. Hayden Christensen did an episode before he became Anakin Skywalker. No, that was before episode 2 of Attack of the Clones that he did the Tale of Bigfoot Ridge, way before, or started filming, and then he, I think it was I forget, there was one that he used in the tale of what DJ said in the Tale of the Carved Stone. He casted John White, who was also the original Riddler. It was he the original Riddler?
Hey, are you thinking of Frank Gorshin?
Frank Gorshin, sorry. Frank Gorshin.
Also a mainstay on Twilight Zone.
Yep.
Interesting.
They had him in an episode. I mean, these are just things that I never knew. I mean, I knew about, like, they did one with Hayden Christensen because I watched that. One with Will Friedle. I watched that too. Ryan Gosling, I knew that. And I mean, it can, and also Tatiana Ali. These talents, they started with like just like these one episode of shows, and they went on to big. So Are You Afraid of the Dark probably was their gateway to stardom in some ways.
Their springboard.
Even a couple of members of the Midnight Society went on to bigger things, like Joanna Garcia, who played Sam. She went on to do, she went on to star in various movies and TV shows. She's now married to Nick Swisher. For any baseball fans here.
Who did she play?
She played Sam. She was one of the members of the Midnight Society in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And then the first revival had Alicia Cuthbert, as she was one of the Midnight Society.
Wow. Definitely a springboard for these young emerging talents.
Yep. You also had Jay Bar. I'm looking through some of the guest stars. Jay Baruchel.
Yep.
And Jewel State.
And as we know for this, Are You Afraid of the Dark still lives on for this day. And even for what DJ said, that the show Are You Afraid of the Dark will live on. And it has. So recently, I'm going to be putting this brief. Nickelodeon decided to reboot Are You Afraid of the Dark, and starting with 2019, in a little bit of different concept. It was kind of like, I mean, I just want to put, did anybody ever watched like the kind of like the miniseries from from their second revival of the Tale of the Silver Sight, that whole where the Midnight Society was involved in trying to find the charm of the Silver Sight and destroy it.
No.
Forrest, do you remember that?
I have not gotten around to that one yet. I have not gotten around to watching the latest series.
I have only watched one episode of the reboot. I think they came out with like a either a mini series or an actual film, like a TV film.
It's a mini
3
series.
episodes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
In 2019, they did their first miniseries. It was about like a haunted carnival. I mean, there was some kind of characteristics that was nice, and I'll put it out to you. But it didn't hold for what Are You Afraid of the Dark was just about. And they did have like the kind of thing where they had the kids in the campfire tell a tale. But then again, like it was all on the Midnight Society where everything was involved with just the Midnight Societies telling that. And that's what that whole big carnival thing is. So it's like, okay, I understand, they want to do something different to whatever they're marketing kids. It's different for what it is. But, at least, it held out to like, the Midnight Society and the campfire. But then now that's going on with a mini series of Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Curse of the Shadows. I've already watched 3 episodes into it. Well, let me just say, and some things, there's been some Easter eggs that they have pulled, but I have to say, whoever has done this writing is doing a terrible, terrible job. Because with the Midnight Society, they pulled like some things, like they had like the ghastly grinner, and they popped up with like some Easter eggs, like they told like the tale of the Quicksilver, and they've used Sardo, and the character Sardo in this. I'm not going to get into much of it, but where they did the Midnight Society meetings bothered the crap, because it was always to have it in a ring of a campfire. But no, they're in a house with like a little light. No, that's not the Midnight Society. No, the Midnight Society is you're gathering on a campfire telling a scary tale. And if that's not what you're doing, you are not the Midnight Society. Sorry, you're not the Midnight Society.
Children of the Midnight Society. It's the way things are now. Their parents who hung out in the woods are now too afraid to let their kids even leave the house.
Exactly.
I guess
I have my kids play in the front yard. I'll sit in a chair on the porch, and people look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, "Oh my God, you let your kids out of the house? They're gonna get hurt. What if a car comes on your lawn?" Like, it's just, it's a society we live in. You can't go in the woods and start a fire. Yeah. I'm surprised they're allowed to have that light.
I'm sorry, but that's how I view the Midnight Society. In some things, you can change me. You can modernize things, I can get that. But some things are just hollow, not to be changed.
Things are just best not just left alone. Yeah.
So with that instead, but for what Are You Afraid of the Dark is, to me, it's a great, I still watch them to these days, and it is going to live on. Just as much as it will live on with the shows like The Twilight Zone. This show is definitely, for 30 years, it's still living on quite strong. Mm-hmm. And to this, we pop the champagne. We salute to a toast to Are You Afraid of the Dark? To another 30 years strong. I'd like to thank my guest with me, the host of Unger the Radar. Randy, thank you for coming on.
Anytime, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Also with me, Forrest Bennett. Forrest, thank you for coming on for this episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to finally come on here.
Oh, you're welcome. And also, Matt Roran, the host of Cold Cafe. Thank you for coming on as well.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Always. And don't forget, Unger the Radar is on Mondays on Manhattan Neighborhood Network at 11 a.m. And also with Cold Cafe with Matt. Matt, what do we have going on in Cold Cafe this week?
Oddly enough, this Saturday night we're showing Bad Medicine from 1985, which has a certain fellow we talked about in the show today, Gilbert Gottfried. We got Steve Guttenberg, Gilbert Gottfried, Marge Simpson herself, Julie Kavner's in this movie. Julie Haggerty from the Airplane films. So it's a fun one. Curtis Armstrong. So
Booger.
Yep, Booger. And also Snot from American Dad. He played both Booger and Snot. So yeah, that's what we got coming up this Saturday, 9:50 in the Cult Cafe Not So Secret Society.
And,
Oh,
I got a lot of stuff going on. But this week, I will be on Unger the Radar tomorrow morning with Randy, talking about Coming to America, Cherry, and Test Pattern.
As will I.
And then Tuesday night, I will be with Matt too. And then on Tuesday night, I will be on the Inside Movies Galore podcast, and I'll be joining those guys we'll be talking about Snowpiercer and Popeye.
Oh, nice.
In our month-long theme of non-superhero comic book movies.
Cool. Snowpiercer and Popeye in the same episode? That's
They're both comic book movies.
I know, I love it. It's quite a jump, but I love it.
Modern and classic.
oh yes.
In both aspects. Popeye, a classic film based on a classic comic, and Snowpiercer, a modern comic turned into a modern movie and then TV show.
Yes.
And lastly, so please check out Unger the Radar, Cold Cafe, and for all of our experiences. Coming up on Nostalgia Time later this month is Game Show Month. We will be talking about some greatest game shows, mostly Nickelodeon game shows, Double Dare, Guts, Wild and Crazy Kids, Legends of the Hidden Temple, and Nick Arcade.
Nice. Oh, and Matt, one more thing for Unger the Radar. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be celebrating International Tom Hanks Day, and we'll be doing a few commentaries. First one is with two of you fine gentlemen, and we're going to be doing the Money Pit to kick things off. So, and after that, we'll probably do Castaway, followed by Joe versus Volcano. So three very different Tom Hanks films that really showcase his diverse acting abilities. You've got comedy, you've got drama, you've got adventure. And we all love Hanks. He's America's sweetheart. He's one of our favorite actors. So we're going to be celebrating his big day. So that's International Tom Hanks Day coming up in the next few weeks.
Yes, and I will be on Unger the Radar for the commentary of the Money Pit. So please check that out on Unger the Radar. So with this, I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed. I am Kid Champagne Matthew Haberman. Kid Champagne signing off.